Hi, my name is Jennifer Eubank. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to Arlington County and to the 55 Plus program for making this possible. Yoga, the very word yoga means to connect, and these have been trying, challenging times recently, disrupting our ability to connect together and do our yoga together at the Madison Center or Laurel Hills, wherever you happen to practice your yoga. So I really do appreciate the ability that the county has given us to stay connected. And I have a lovely practice planned for you today based on opening up our hips. And we'll start in a seated position. And first things first, the best thing you can do for your hips when you're sitting down is sit on a blanket. So notice that I have a nice wool blanket and it's folded up evenly because you get that princess in the pea effect. So if you got a little bulge under that blanket, that can really affect things. So get nice and settled and stable in your seat because you can't find comfort and ease if something is wrong. So find the time and the structure that you need to settle in. And as you settle into your seat, perhaps you want to close your eyes or maybe you want to keep them open. If you keep them open, take your gaze downward. Maybe look at the tip of your nose, down at the floor, but still rise up with your sternum as you look down. And let's take a couple of arrival breaths. Inhale deeply through your nose and then exhale through the mouth. And you can do that as many times as you like, as gently or vigorously as you like, and you don't have to open the mouth at all. If you want to keep the mouth closed and do your breathing all with closed mouth, you can do that as well. This is your practice. And we'll take just a few moments to notice our seat. First things first, how stable are you? What's the connection between the earth and you? Feel the security of the earth beneath you, rooting you, and feel yourself rising up from that earth. Kind of polar opposites, rooting and rising at the same time. And take just a couple more breaths. Maybe notice your relation to the rest of the room, the ceiling and the walls around you. Notice what the environment is like inside. How's the breath working for you? In yoga, we breathe in and out through the nose unless otherwise suggested. Calms the body, calms the mind. So now let's go ahead and let's start to put some movement in things. We'll start gently. We'll start right where we are from this seated position, and we'll start to do some hip rolls. And start whatever direction feels right for you. And start small. And as you progress, start to get a little bit bigger with these circles. And maybe they're not circles, maybe they're more like ovals. It doesn't quite matter the shape. Rolling around, rooting into our seat, lifting up and opening up these hips. We hold so much tension in our hips. And there's a big connection between our minds and our bodies. So stress in your hips transcends into stress in that mind. So as we work out the stress here, it starts to really ease up the more subtle energies in our body. Let's go a few more rotations. Breathing all the while. Notice if you're going a little deeper, a little further. And then let's start to come back in Maybe your eyes are open, maybe you're closed. And then as you're ready, we'll switch directions. So sometimes I have my eyes open, every now and then I close them. I just go with the flow. All the while breathing, nice, gentle, and smooth inhales, followed by smooth exhales, going round and round. Notice if it feels different this side. Notice if you're starting to feel a little bit more freedom. And you're probably starting to feel some openness in the shoulders as well. And then let's go ahead and start to finish up. So we'll do a few more smaller rotations, kind of like a corkscrew, coming back into the center, landing back in the middle. And take a couple of breaths and just notice if there are any changes in your seat, your hips, your shoulders, your emotions. Take a couple of breaths here. And we don't want to rush into the next sequence. Now let's take our hands out to the sides. And let's inhale them up overhead and exhale them back down. And we'll do this a few times. These are called peacocks. So we just opened up a lot in the hips. Now we want to open up a little bit more in the shoulders and the whole torso area. The front of the torso, the back of the torso, the sides of the torso. And we coordinate this movement with the breath, inhaling with one motion and exhaling with the other. Most people inhale as they rise up and exhale as they come back down. Let's do a couple more. Notice if they're changing. Notice if you're sitting up a little bit taller. And then the next time we bring those arms up, we inhale them up. But let's exhale just one hand down, doesn't matter which one. And then next inhale, reach up with the one that's up. And then exhale, curve over to the hand that's on the floor. And make sure that hand stays solid on the floor so it doesn't slide out from under you. And we'll stay here for a couple of breaths and a crescent moon, and stay rooted in your seat as you reach. And then your next inhale, let's lift up and we'll go over to the other side. And as we exhale, we'll curve over to this side, settle in here. Hand is rooted, both sits bones are rooted, especially this one. So as I reach to the right here, my left sit bone wants to come off the floor, but I'm going to keep it nice and rooted. Our next inhale, let's come up and exhale the hand down. Let's do one more on each side. So inhale both arms up, exhale the right hand down, or whichever hand, inhale and exhale over. And I'm mirroring, so when I say right, I do left. When I say left, I do right. So I should make that clear. If I use sides, sometimes I'll just give you a choice. I'll stay here a couple more breaths. Root, inhale and reach, exhale and curve a little bit more. Next inhale, let's come up and exhale that hand down. And let's put both hands on the knees and let's stay here for just a couple of breaths. And then let's do some twisting. So sit up nice and tall and then turn to the right. And as you turn to the right, bring your right hand to the back and let it land somewhere, and then take the other hand to the opposite knee when it's ready. Maybe it lands in the front at first, but eventually it comes to that opposite knee, and you can start to gently coax yourself a little bit further in this twist. And make sure you're looking up and over the shoulder. You're not looking down at the floor. You're lifting as you twist. Couple more breaths here. As you inhale, lift. As you exhale, perhaps go a little deeper. And then to prepare to come back next time, inhale and lift. Exhale, twist back to center. And inhale, lift. Exhale, twist to the left. Then the Left hand comes to the back, the right hand comes to the left knee and starts to coax you a little bit further. Shoulders and knees, relax them as much as possible as you twist. And then your next inhale, let's come back to center. Let's do it one more time. So inhale, lift, exhale, twist right, right hand in back, left hand in front, eventually finds the knee, eventually perhaps brings you a little bit deeper. If it's there for you, you find what's your range of motion this morning. Just because I do something doesn't mean you have to do it. Let's use an inhale. We'll come back up, back to the front. Inhale, lift. Exhale, twist left. Land those hands where they want to land to give you that stability and that structure to perhaps go a little bit deeper this time. And then when you're ready, we'll make our way back to center. And as you come back to center, hands on the knees, reconnect with your seat, reconnect with your torso, reconnect with your breath here. And just notice any changes that might have happened after those twists. Okay, so now for the next part, let's come onto our hands and knees for table pose. So I'm going to turn to the side and do things from the side. And if you have some sore knees this morning or just in general, you're welcome to put a blanket under your knees. And take the time to find a good solid table. Make sure your hands are shoulder width apart and your knees are hip width distance apart. So you want a good stable table that's going to support the change that's about to occur. So what we'll do, soften your elbows a little bit. So it's also important, don't straighten your arms so much that your elbows hyperextend. You want a little bit of softness, slight bend to those elbows. And then we'll curve our spine down towards the floor. This is cow. Then we'll curve our spine towards the ceiling. This is cat. So I'm curving the spine down for cow, and I'm curving it up for cat. And notice that these first couple, I'm not really moving my head. I'm curving the spine towards the front of the body. I'm curving the spine towards the back of the body. Inhaling with one motion and exhaling with another. So notice that I'm not rocking back and forth. My hands are stationary, my knees are stationary. The movement is occurring in the spine. And the further I go, the more my hips and shoulders and head start to get into it. So as I inhale up into my cow, I kind of look up just a little bit and see those beautiful trees out there. And then as I exhale, I see my belly button, which is getting really thin, my belly button, because I'm not gaining weight during this time as what's the noun for being sequestered? My sequestration. Okay, let's do just a few more of these. Back and forth. Inhaling with one motion, exhaling with another. And then when you're ready, settle back into your table and reconnect with your table. And if your hands are sore, you can always come back and do a little bit of this. And by the way, some tips to keep your wrists sore. Keep your fingers spread really wide when you're bearing weight on them, and bear the weight on the first two fingers rather than the outside fingers. The outside of the wrist is not as strong as the inside of the wrist. So you can put pressure there, spread those fingers, and also really put most of the weight in the back of the body. Ask the back of the body to do a little bit more of the work for you. And that's going to come in handy when we get into our dogs, which we'll do in just a few moments. Bring your hands forward a couple of inches, and then we'll start some rocking horses. Shifting the weight forward and shifting the weight back. So as I come forward, I'm kind of like making my way to a plank, a kneed plank. And as I come back, I'm making my way into a puppy pose. Bit by bit, bit by bit. And as I do this, I'm starting to be like, okay, I need to get rid of my blanket. So you may want to keep your blanket, but I'm going to go ahead and remove mine because it's starting to hinder my freedom of movement. So listen to your body, listen to your props. And we're going back and forth. And maybe at some point, take a little pause in your plank and fire up your core muscles. And maybe at some point, pause back in your puppy and wag your tail. Bring your hips from side to side. Free up those hips. Remember, this is a hip opening class today, hip opening practice. And then as you're ready, if you're wagging your tail, make your way back to puppy. Maybe you're still doing your rocking horses, and that's fine. You pick what is working for you, and eventually see if you might turn your puppy into child. So this looks like child's, but my head and hips are in the air, so that's more like a puppy. Eventually, my hips start to settle, and I eventually bring them all the way down, and my head comes down to the floor. So this is child's pose. And if you can't get your hips down to the heel, you could take that blanket and put it in between the hips and the heel. So your hips don't have to go down so far. And you can stack your hands, which are in fists. So your hands, or your head doesn't have to travel so far. And then you can eventually, oh, you know what? I can turn fists into hands. I can start to reach out. I can lengthen and embolden my child's pose. So we'll stay here just a few more breaths, whatever version is working for you. You could always go back to puppy if puppy feels more comfortable for you. You decide. Breathe, nice, gentle, smooth breathing through those hips. And then when you're ready, next time you inhale, lift up into table and reconnect with your table and take a couple of breaths to reconnect. And then from table, I like to bring my hands forward a couple of inches, and then I curl my toes, I straighten my legs, I lift up my hips, and once they come up, I bring the heels down towards the floor and press into the floor with my hands. So I'm not here with my head, but my head is trying to make it to the back of the body. And that really puts pressure, puts more of the workload into the back of the body, the legs, the feet, the bum, the belly, a lot stronger. Whenever you're ready or whenever you need a rest, you can lower into table, puppy, or child's, and you can always put a little bit of movement. You could always go back to those rocking horses. But otherwise, let's explore our downward facing dogs for about the next couple of minutes. So whenever you need a rest, come down and rest in one of those options. And whenever you're ready to come back up, you can come back up into your dog. And you can lift up on the toes and bring the heels down. That's called, well, this is walking your dog, when you bend one knee and then the other. So you can put a little bit of motion in your still dog, or you can keep it nice and still. Whenever you want, you can come down. And I'll show you a couple of other tricks. You can take this blanket and you can put it in the back. So if you have a hard time bringing your heels down to the floor, the heels don't have to come down quite as far. So now my heels, if I can't bring them down to the floor, it feels like they're on the floor because they're on the blanket. So then I can root into my legs a little bit more, and then I can come back here a little bit more rather than be up here. I'm back here to the back of the mat, the back of the body, the bottom part of the body, the stronger part of the body, taking pressure off those wrists. I'm going to take another little rest. I'm going to take a couple of breaths here in my child's pose. Let's go about 10 or so more breaths exploring our downward facing dogs. your version. You can always get up on the, and put your hands on the wall and do your downward dog on the wall. So imagine my hands are on a wall, not a floor. You could do that version. Here's another version. My favorite hip opening version is three-legged dog. And then from three-legged dog, I bend the knee and then I open out to that side. This is called fire hydrant dog. And I'm going to do it on the other side so you can see what it looks like on that side. So I lift up, I bend, and then I open. Very liberating for the hip, and especially for the inner thigh, the groin muscles, the groin joints, the hip joints. And then if you do that version, take a couple of breaths back in your regular dog before you make your way back down. And over the course of the next couple of breaths, make your way back down. Take your time. Maybe you're still doing your three-legged dogs. Take your time to settle back into maybe table, maybe puppy, maybe child's. You decide. And we'll stay here for a few more breaths. Nice long inhales and nice long exhales. Gentle and smooth. Soft face, soft joints, especially the elbows and the shoulders as we reach forward. And then next time you inhale, let's make our way back up to table. And then we'll do another really nice hip opening pose called pigeon pose. So there are a couple of different ways you can come into pigeon. You can come back up into your dog and do a three-legged dog, bend the knee, and then bring the knee down and settle into your pigeon like this. Or you could come from table. So if you're feeling tired, and if you're just not feeling it today, if you want something a little bit more gentle, come into table, bring whatever knee you want to that corresponding hand, and then the other leg settles and straightens back in the back. And as you do that, that front leg, you can start to bring that foot forward, and it doesn't have to come all the way forward. Ideally, the shin is parallel to the top edge of your mat, but most people don't go there. I certainly don't. The main thing is that you find your prototype, your comfortable prototype, so to speak. So take the time to settle in, shift about, and once you're good and solid, make sure your hips are even. So my hips are in a horizontal line. It's almost as if I like to think of my hips as 2 points, 2 constellation points, 2 stars. And there's a line between those 2 stars, and it's straight, it's even. So the hips are nice and balanced, giving me the foundation and the security I need to start exploring my pigeon. So perhaps you want to stay up, but after a couple of breaths, maybe you want to start to come down into Sphinx arms, so those arms are on the floor. And maybe eventually you want to bring your head down, and you could always stack your fists like we did earlier, or stack your hands. You find your pigeon. It doesn't have to be really big and grandiose. It just has to fit your needs. And we'll spend a couple more breaths here. And before we start to come back up, take your mind back into your hips. Notice what's going on in your hips. And use the hips and that front leg and your hands and your arms to start to lift back up. And then when you're ready, curl the toes in the back. And maybe you just bring your knee back into table. Or maybe you'd like to lift back up into that dog and that three-legged dog. You decide. And we'll spend a couple of breaths in dog or table, doesn't matter, as long as things are even and symmetrical. And then we'll do the other side. So I'm going to go from table this time. So I'm going to go ahead and let's bring our other knee up to that hand and start to heel toe that foot up. And as you do that, straighten that back leg. Take your time. Take your time. And settle in. And find those even lines in your hips so you got a good foundation. It's good and solid. So take the time to find that security before you start to explore your pose. Maybe after a certain point you want to come down onto the forearms in your Sphinx arm pigeon pose. That might make you want to change something in the back. So as I came down, my legs started to get a little bit longer and my hips came a little bit further down. And then I'm going to take myself all the way down. But I take my time and I see that I need some help. So I put a hand there for me because it's a little different on this side. I'm slowly, gently breathing in and out. And then when you're ready, knowing that a change is about to occur, shore it up. So find that foundation before you make the change. Don't just thrust yourself into a change. Make sure you're ready for it. Bit by bit. Now we're back up. And then I will bring my knee back. And now I'm back into table, right where I started from. And let me shake my table hips from side to side. And let's revisit puppy and or child's pose. Maybe you want to do some rocking horses to get there. And just find symmetry returning back to the body. Nice, gentle, smooth inhales followed by nice, gentle, smooth exhales. Inhale, feel your spine getting nice and long and spacious. And as you exhale, feel the wide lines in the body getting wider. The hips, the sits bones, the shoulders, the collarbones. And relax the joints. And then on your next inhale, let's use that inhale to come up. And then let's make our way down onto our bellies for just a brief moment. Down onto your belly, take your time and lay your body all the way down. Stack your hands, one on top of the other, forehead on top of the hands, and land there for just a moment. And then when you're ready, let's use as little motion and movement as possible to turn over. And as you turn over onto your back, situate yourself so that the mat is there for you. Now, make sure you are good and centered and knees bent, feet on the floor. And the knees and the hips should be the same distance apart. So my feet are apart, so my knees are apart. And they're about the same distance. And that keeps things good and balanced. We'll do some bridge poses. So this is bridge prep, knees bent, feet on the floor, feet and knees, same distance apart, arms by the sides. I have my palms facing the floor and I spread the fingers wide. I find my dog hands for my bridge because that helps me. And then when I'm ready, I lift the hips up towards the ceiling and I'll stay here for a few breaths and just see what's going on with my bridge. This is my bridge prototype. And then when you're ready, slowly come down one vertebra at a time. Okay, so now that we're back down, whenever you're ready, make your way back up. And before you go back up, change anything you need to. So I'm bringing my feet a little bit closer this time around because I want to go up a little bit higher. So I made some discoveries that first bridge, and I'm going to use that information for the second bridge and find a sense of progression. So I'm really rooting into my feet and into my shoulders as I lift up. And then whenever you're ready, use an exhale to come back down. And slowly come back down one vertebrae at a time on the exhale. And then when you're ready to do another one, use an inhale to lift you up and stay for however long you want. Maybe you want to lift up higher. Maybe you want to bring the hands underneath your bum and interlace the fingers and bring those shoulders in a little bit more. Maybe. You decide. This is your bridge, and you hold it as long as you want, and you bring it down whenever you want. And try to keep any wobble out of the knees. So don't let the knees sway back and forth. Keep it controlled as you come back down. And now we're back down. So let's stay here for just a couple of breaths. Back down on the floor. Knees are still bent. Not a huge change. Then we'll bring our knees into the chest. And that's a pretty big change. So we want to take our time with that. Knees into the chest. This is Apanasana, wind relief pose. This is our next to the last pose. You can rock from side to side. And then when you're ready, come back to center, back into wind relief pose, Apanasana. And if you want, you can bring your arms on the inside and find the outside edges with your feet and turn it into a happy baby. Really nice hip opening move here. And you can rock from side to side and give your middle and low back a nice little massage. And then when you're ready, come back to stillness. And then when you're ready, release the hands, squeeze the knees back into the chest. And then when you're ready, feet come back down. And then when you're ready, extend the feet back out. And take a couple of breaths here, settling into shavasana. And notice how the body feels now after that nice hip opening practice. So take the next few moments to notice the effects of what we just did. The effects on the body, the effects on the breath, and your moods and emotions. And release into the floor. And then when you're ready, start to deepen your breath and wriggle your fingers and toes. If you'd like to stay in shavasana, you're certainly welcome to stay right where you are. But if you're ready to come on up, we'll make our way back up slowly but surely. Bend the knees, feet on the floor for a breath or two. Come to one side for a breath or two. And then as you're ready, come back up. Perhaps get your blanket and come back in a seat. Fix your hair. Settle into a good foundation here. And as you settle into this foundation, notice, so we're right back where we started. Does anything feel a little different for you? Take the time to notice the effects of that practice. And breathe on that, and maybe close the eyes as you do that. And then when you're ready, bring your hands to heart center. May you all be safe, may you all be happy, and may you all be free from suffering. Thank you so much for your practice. Namaste.